All right, I'll wait for the first attendees to jump on and we can start talking. All right, we'll start letting people in. Oh, wow, there's a good amount.
We are live.
Okay, we are live. So guys, as Tim is letting people in, why don't we just start off with talking about what we're drinking tonight, and then go ahead, Susan. You want to talk about what you had?
I'm drinking Nambu Bijin, one of my favorite sakes. It's from Iwate Prefecture, and I'm having it in an Arushi sake cup from Iwate Prefecture. So synergy.
Awesome. We also have Jamie on board. You want to talk about what you're drinking before we get all going over here?
Yeah, I pulled out something a little nice tonight. Isojimon, it's been a personal favorite for a while. These guys are from Shizuoka. They're not too far from actually the city I first lived in Japan. I didn't know that at the time. That's kind of a just sort of a coincidence. But they're great. I've loved them a long time. I thought I discovered them. Sort of a friend introduced me to it. I was like, oh, that's amazing. And they weren't super well known here in the States. And then I later found out they're actually extremely well known in Japan and sort of considered very, very good, all this stuff. But I thought it's like thinking you discovered the region of Burgundy or something. I'm like, have you guys heard about this? Like, it's amazing. And I'm drinking it out of, not a ochoko, but kind of a nice, nice glass here. This is this woman, Jancis Robinson, who is a wine writer, designed a series of wine glasses for kind of, tasting wine. They're kind of like Zaltos, those sort of very thin ones. I love this because I don't actually usually like stemware. I kind of like having these more, things you can grasp. So these are technically the water glasses in the selection, but it's the same thing as the wine glasses without a stem. So I love using this for sake. So it's kind of a nice sort of fruity daiginjo type thing. So it's nice to have it in something where you can get a lot of the aromas out of it.
Awesome.
Yep.
So I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I have an array of things that I'm going to be drinking today. So I just brought in a whole bunch of small cup sake.
Yay!
So I have the Maneki Wanko, and then I also have Yuki Otoko, which we just brought on over to Sen. Soto now just released their canned cup sake, so I'm going to try that. And if I'm crazy enough and I'm just going to keep on going, I also have over here Amabuki Ichigo.
Yay!
Beautiful New York.
I love that. I love the commemorative cup.
And then when I'm feeling even crazier tonight, we're going to probably end with some Kikisui. Funaguchi Namagenshu. So
at the Nijikai, save that for the Nijikai, and tell everyone what the Nijikai is.
Yes. So I see that a bunch of people are now joining up. So we're going to just start talking about how tonight's going to go. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight to join our American Sake Association Sunday social sake event featuring Brooklyn Kura. We're going to be interviewing Brandon and Brian, who are going to be doing a beautiful tour of their brewery in Industry City in a little bit. And for right now, we're going to be just kind of talking about what we're drinking. And afterwards, at 9 p.m., once things are done, we'll do a Nijikai, which is kind of the after party. You could say where we can all get together, because at the moment, you'll be seeing myself, Jesse Matsuoka, we have Jamie Graves, Susan McCormick, that are hosting tonight's event. But then afterwards, the Nijikai will be allowing everyone to kind of come on board to be able to show your cameras. We can do a full cheers and then talk about whatever you want to talk about while enjoying your cup of sake. So we're about 10 to 15 minutes out from doing our tour, but first of all, we just want to thank all of you for coming on board. We're going to be doing a bunch of Q&As, and if you have any time to be able to post any questions, we would love to be able to hear your thoughts on, the sake industry, whatever it may be. We will be taking questions for Brandon and Brian after the tour. So I'll be trying to ask questions throughout the event as well. But first of all, just thank you so much for all attending, and kanpai to a great event, right? So we'll start off with a, oh, I have to open up first. Okay, here we go. So kanpai.
Kanpai. Yummy.
The Yuki Otoko.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, the Japanese Yeti.
Yeah, so I would just like to mention, thanks everybody for joining. Obviously, what we're thinking, this has kind of been a work in progress. The American Sake Association a couple of years ago was initially a conversation between a couple of us after a fundraiser for Puerto Rico after the sort of the hurricane and the damage and the things that they had. And it was sort of an idea, we put together this sort of very last minute fundraiser. It involved sort of the sake industry in New York and restaurants, and really what the idea is thinking, hey, we've got this great community here, American sake in general, and we do these kind of great events, and they're always kind of ad hoc, they're always just kind of thrown together at the last minute. And we really wanted to just kind of put sort of, an umbrella around all that enthusiasm, have sort of a place and a forum for discussion about sake, education kind of divorced from any one company. It's kind of been associated specifically with companies. I mean, I do it, I work for a wine distributor as their sake person and do a lot of education for them, but that's specifically geared towards, the sake that I sell. And we wanted to have something that was kind of irrespective of any of the companies, that was just sort of about sake in general for people enthusiastic about it. And then also being able to do sort of fun things like this. So one thing we're thinking with the rest of this is to every week feature somebody involved in the world of sake. We'd love to concentrate on American people in sake in America. We had a gentleman who started Tipsy, which is an online sort of sake buying shop that started, when was it, guys, like a year or so ago?
November 2019, so not that long ago. Yeah.
So he just got started, kind of ridiculously good time with all of this. Had him on. We've got the Brooklyn Kura guys on tonight, and we're looking to feature somebody different each week. So if you're interested in speaking with us, I mean, for us, it's a chance to sort of meet the people around the country in sake, and we'd like to, try some things with Japan too as well. But this is, like we said, kind of a work in progress. That's kind of where we're at.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know last week we did the focus was really our aha moments of where we kind of fell in love with sake. So maybe we can even start off with talking about a little bit about that too. For myself, I talked last week a little bit about Hanyato, which I can see that some people are actually trying that now, which is beautiful. And since I already talked about my aha moment before, maybe I'll talk about some of the most inspiring moments in the sake world that I've gotten to experience. And one of them, I mean, I have the pleasure to actually visit some of the breweries in Japan year after year. And one brewery that just keeps on sticking in my head that is a fantastic tour is that of Hakkaisan. To me, I mean, it's also on the way to one of my friends' ski resorts. So that also helps as well in Niigata. But one thing that I just keeps on coming back to is the inspiration from not only Hakkaisan's Toji, but it's also about the respect, the love that is put into that product. I've brought friends, chefs, my own chefs that I bring over to the brewery. They're not only inspired by the brewery, by the Toji, by everyone, the Kuramoto, Kura people, right? The brewery people, but the environment. And I wish to be able to kind of share that with you through these events. We want to be able to inspire you in the sake world. And there's going to be many more events where we're going to do kind of those tours even through the experiences that we have. So there's something really fun to look forward to in the coming seminars and webinars and talks and just hangouts that we'll have, that you'll kind of see our experiences. And today with Brooklyn Kura, it's going to be really fun to kind of not only see what they're doing right now, but to kind of hear their story. But maybe Susan, you want to talk about what your aha moment?
Yeah, sure. I don't really have an aha moment. It's more like a meandering journey that taken almost about 30 years now. So for a little background, I am half Japanese, but my mother does not drink alcohol. And my father was a white American guy who drank Pabst Blue Ribbon. And I also grew up in North Carolina, a very small town in the 70s and 80s, where no one knew anything about sake and it wasn't available. So I didn't grow up with any kind of awareness of the beverage. And the first time I tried it, I was in my early 20s at a sushi restaurant in Richmond, Virginia. And one of my coworkers, a group of coworkers had gone out for dinner, and one of my coworkers ordered hot sake for the table. And I don't know what brand it was. I didn't see a bottle, and I didn't like it. I did not like the way it tasted. And it was probably another 6 years before I had another drop of sake. And by that point, I was living in Boston and going to frequenting a sushi restaurant. But I was so overwhelmed. It was like one of those gigantic menus with the laminated sheets, and had the pictures of bottles on it. And I would look at it and say, well, I had no idea what anything said, didn't know what it meant. And I would just point at something, oh, that bottle looks cool, I'll try that. Or ask, a waiter, what do you recommend? But, we didn't have smartphones. I didn't take any pictures of any labels. So it was like Ichigo Ichie, it was like, that was the sake for that day, never to be had again, And then it wasn't until I moved here to New York in 2000 where I really started thinking, I want to learn something about it. I'm not a sake professional, but I wanted to be able to make informed decisions when I went out to a Japanese restaurant or any restaurant that offers sake. So I started blogging, and then in 2011, I launched Japan Culture NYC, my website. And because of that, I've been able to go to a lot of events that are sake focused or Japanese cuisine focused. And once I met Chizuko Nikawa Helton and Timothy Sullivan and Chris Johnson and Jessica Jolly, I started learning so much more about the beverage that made it so much more meaningful for me than having someone just recommend something for me, and I don't understand the intricacies of the brewing process, but I know what brands I like, and I know what I like to pair with certain sake and certain foods. So, and it's an ongoing education, which is why I'm really happy to be part of this organization, because I keep learning something from you guys every time I talk to you. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, Susan.
thank
That's
you.
we have a couple of different polls that we'd love to be able to announce. One of them is, what are you drinking tonight? So we have our behind the scenes Tim Sullivan, just letting that pop up right now. So please let us know what kind of drinks you're having tonight. If you do know, for those people that don't know your categories, that's perfectly fine. We're going to try and see how things are. I mean, it's very interesting to see the polls as they're coming in. It looks like nobody is drinking any honjozos at the moment, but there's one. All right. So again, thank you so much. We're going to be getting going with our tour with Brooklyn Kura in just a moment. In a couple of minutes, we'll bring on Brandon and Brian to do that for us. I was a quick little story behind. I was honored to actually work a couple of days over with Brandon and experience the sake making with them over there. It was during the time that I was renovating my restaurant, and I had time available to try out something. And I had asked them if they were open to me kind of coming by and seeing if I can help them out without messing anything up. And it was a beautiful experience. And they have an amazing place. So I do look forward to all of you seeing it for yourself through Zoom and being able to ask questions. So it's really important. Please use the Q&A to then ask any questions that you like. We'll be getting to most of those questions in terms of the the ones for Brandon and Brian after the walkthrough. But I'll try my best to be able to ask questions as he's walking, and if hopefully we don't miss anything. All right. So it seems that we do have a majority here with the poll of what you're drinking tonight. Jamie, you want to go over the poll?
Where do I see it? Sorry.
Oh, Jesse can see the result. Okay, so it looks like I'm the only one that can see the results. I'm sorry about that. So, yes. So the poll tonight with what sake are you drinking tonight? We have a winner of Junmai Shu, 32% people drinking Junmai, and then we have about 26% of people drinking Junmai Ginjo or Ginjos, and the least amount of beverages, sake, that is enjoyed tonight is actually koshu. And it's understandable. I mean, it only makes up a couple percent of the whole marketplace. But I would say that it's so important for you all to try some koshu, because it is a great category, and it brings out so many different characteristics that are totally unseen within the normal market of sake. I know that I talked about Ippongi Brewery that does the chili infused plum sake, but they also have an amazing koshu sake. They actually have a underground cave system that they're aging over 1 million bottles. So it's a really, really amazing stuff. So if you ever get a chance to see a koshu or aged sake in a sake list from a restaurant or at a wine store or anything like that, I advise you to please try them out. All right. So we're just about getting to around time to introduce our beautiful, beautiful Brooklyn Kura tour by Brandon and Brian. I think it's about time to bring them on. Shall we do that? All right. I'm going to close this right now. I'm going to close the polls. And then, beautiful. Tim, would you mind bringing over Brian and Brandon? Okay, so I think we have, let me just see the gallery view here. There we go. All right, Brian is on, and then we're going to try and get Brandon on. Maybe we can unmute Brian for a moment while we're waiting for Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon, for some reason, had a computer, so he's signing back on right now. Give us 1 second. Thanks.
Great. So Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, come by. First of all, yeah. Proud of you at home and at the brewery.
So, no, it's wonderful. It's a privilege for us. We're huge supporters of the organization. It's the type of group of people and kind of range of different participants as members and also as organizers that we're just excited to be affiliated with, let alone get to drink sake with. So thank you guys for including us.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, looks like Brendan is connecting to audio right there. So we're going to get the beautiful tour.
All right. I'm sorry. I really wanted to start outside and show you the expansion that we're doing. But I think if I go any further from here, I lose internet. Mm-hmm. So maybe we can put pictures up later of the new space we have down here. The nice thing about this new space is we're going to move rice steaming and rice cooling and pressing over there and sort of separate different processes. So also let me start off by saying we're at Industry City, which is a really fabulous space. I'm going to switch my video now so you can not look at me. Were there not a pandemic happening, this would be filled with people enjoying various distilleries and barbecue places and beer breweries. And we're really lucky to be here. And we hope that people can get back together soon and come out and enjoy open spaces. So what I'll do is I'll give a quick tour. Like I said, we are under construction, so everyone will excuse little bit of a construction mess right now. Let's change shoes real quickly.
How important is it to be switching out your shoes?
I mean, I have an opinion on that because I've been to a bunch of different breweries in Japan to where, you know, I've been shirtless in a koji room where sake has been flowing into like kind of an open pit, and then it's scooped up into a tank. And then I've also been in breweries where you go through a clean room.
Yep.
So there's a wide spectrum, I guess is what I'll say.
All right, cool. So what are we looking at over here?
So why don't I just quickly go through the general process, which many of you I'm sure know, of how sake is made and how we do it here. The first thing that happens is we get our rice already polished. Polishing machines are very big and very expensive, and real estate is at a premium in Brooklyn. So we buy rice already polished. We use two main kinds of rice. We use Yamada Nishiki, and we also use Calrose, which I think is sort of becoming the American sake mai.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we do is we wash the rice, and this is one of the few pieces of Japanese equipment that we have. But basically, this tumbles the rice for a minute or two, and then this lever flips over, and clean rice comes out. And then to obtain a certain moisture content, we soak the rice in these tubs that we lay out on here. So the next day after soaking, we steam the rice. And this is a steamer we had built here in Brooklyn. We steam for about an hour. And then we kind of repurpose this room. So here's what I'm talking about the expansion, because just yesterday we bottled a bunch of sake. So we have to repurpose this room from rice washing and cooling to bottling, which isn't ideal, but with the new space, we can kind of separate those processes.
And sorry, Brandon, if I may ask, there's a question over here from Michelle. Where did you get your equipment, or did you have to have it custom made?
A lot of it is mostly custom made. I mean, I think it's a bit of a puzzle to get equipment out of Japan, and it's also very expensive. So I think breweries that maybe are outside of Japan or thinking about starting up maybe need to like make a lot of their things. So we actually have very few imported items from Japan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you know, like as many of you know, about 20% of all the rice that goes into a batch of sake is turned into koji. And so this is our koji room. It's also temporarily acting as a storage room. But this is a clean, well-insulated room. And we have this brand new koji table that we had a neighbor of ours at Industry City build for us. And I'm very happy with it. If anybody wants the contact for that person, you can email me at brandon@brooklynkura.com. But we'll take about 100 kilograms of rice, put a cloth out here, lay it down, let it get to a specific temperature. Then we'll inoculate it with the koji spores or kojikin. And it's about a 2-day process. And the first part of it is basically letting the heat of the room drive the heat of the rice. After about 24 hours, the koji starts making its own heat, and it gets like surprisingly warm. So at that point, this sort of shifts gears, turns into more of a box. And then the second day is all about progressively spreading the rice out. And then if it gets too warm, I've got an automatic system here where I can blow air into here and kind of pull the heat out of the koji to make sure it doesn't get too warm.
Very cool.
All right, so I'll take you over to the tank room. Let me take a second to talk about our water, which is very important for sake. So when Brian and I met, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and we have just pristine water in Portland. And Brian was talking about starting the sake brewery in New York. And you know, my West Coast perception of New York was the largest city in the country. They can't possibly have good water. But it turns out Brooklyn water is already famous. It's famous for bagels. It's famous for pizza. We're trying to make it famous for sake.
Yes.
And it comes from a protected water source up in the Catskills in upstate New York. And it's really low in iron, which is important for sake. As the water comes into New York, it picks up a little bit of iron from the old pipes, and the city chlorinates it. So the way we deal with that is we have one filter here that specifically removes iron, and then this filter here, which is just a carbon filter that specifically removes the chlorine. So we have a nice, light, clean water that we can chill to achieve the temperatures we need to achieve to brew sake even in August in New York City. So you can see we're under construction a little bit. The big thing that we're going to do, and this I couldn't take over here because of the connection, but we're going to drop this wall down. And that is where rice steaming and cooling and even the pressing the sake is going to go over there. So we're going to have more space in this area for tanks. Yeah, so after we've grown the koji, we steam more rice. I'm going to just show you a batch of sake right now. So this batch of sake, we don't brew this very often, but this is our Occidental series. This is a non-traditional sake that it starts out very traditionally, but we're going to gently dry hop it after we press it. And I just did some readings this morning, and I think I'll probably start pressing it tomorrow.
I love that sake. I have to say it did very, very well at my restaurant. So I want to just say congratulations on that batch, and I look forward to the.
Thank you. Yeah. So here's what. So today I spent part of the day cleaning this press. So this is sort of an American yabuta. This is a mash filter press. It's used in beer brewing sometimes. The main difference between this and a yabuta is the thickness of the plates. So there's kind of a lot of bit of space in here. So the kasu comes out thicker. But we're pretty happy with this. This one's a little undersized. We hope to maybe scale it up for when we move it over to the next space.
I know there was a question on, like, are you allowed to sell or give away the kasu? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we're, Brian might correct me when we go out to the tap room here in a moment. So the laws are a little strange and loose. It's a food at that point. So that falls under different licensing, but we do give some away. We are working to have zero waste, so that everything that comes in is turned into a project or a product. And there's so many things you can do with different elements of sake making. I think we can achieve that.
Oh yeah, there's so many chefs out there that are just falling in love with koji and kasu and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I hope for things to move along so that you can move that product as fast as you can, because I know there's a demand for it.
Yeah. I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about our laboratory, which is right here. But some of the things that we measure while we're making a batch of sake, we try and measure things every single day. The main thing that we measure is the gravity of the sake, which tells us how much sugar is still in there generally, and how much alcohol, a little to a degree, is being made. So we do that with these little floaty guys that will float in the solution and give us the reading. This is in Japanese sake making, this is Nihon Shudo. I work in metric, so this is specific gravity for me. So we get that number of the density of the sake every day, and then we also determine what the alcohol is every day. We do that by comparing the boiling point of the sake to distilled water in something called an eboliometer.
See that five times fast? No, I'm joking. I'm sorry.
Wait, one more. What did you say one more time?
No, could you say that 5 times fast?
Yeah, I could. I've been told not to. Another thing we measure is sando, or the total acidity of sake. And this is like the second piece of Japanese equipment we have. This is a sake-specific acid meter. And it's like, normally people do this with a lot more labware. This is pretty convenient. We can just, within 5 minutes, get a reading of our acid values. And then another measure we take once in a while is the glucose, the total glucose of it, because we want to end at a certain glucose for the sake. And we use a diabetic blood sugar meter for that with some modification, so we can actually get the amount of glucose left in the sake.
I wouldn't have thought of that, actually.
Yeah.
Brandon, I actually have another cool question from Michelle over here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It says, I know you've done a lot of experimental, non-traditional sakes. What was your favorite? And did you have one that you made that you said never again?
We have. I got to say, I might talk about that more when we sit down. But there were a few that I made that I was like, oh, okay, that's not going to work. And then I let them be for a while, and I came back to them, and now I love them. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is actually something I wanted to talk about later, but just the learning curve on sake is long. Mm-hmm. And it's like, certainly there are things you can dismiss right away. But you know, it's always good to give something like the benefit of time to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So we take all these measurements on a daily basis, and we try and make graphs. And so I don't know how we can see this, but this is a graph called BMD. And this is a nice Ginjo curve. And what this graph is telling me, this is sort of time in this direction. And the y-axis is weird. It's the day times the balme, which is weird. But the thing to take away from it is the shape of that curve. So this is a good Ginjo curve. It starts off, it doesn't go above that high, and it ends at about day 30. Where at a Junmai, it would shoot up much more steeply and come down much more quickly.
So if you could explain that in layman's terms for our less experienced sake viewers, is that curve that you're talking about what kind of flavor profile? Is that creating more of a sweeter floral or more drier earthy?
It's more about the difference between, say, table sake or junmai or junmai ginjo or junmai daiginjo. Junmai, like ginjo and daiginjo tend to be flat and long. Mm-hmm. So you're taking your time to slowly develop those flavors. Mm-hmm. Whereas other sakes are like more quick, and the graph shoots up and comes down, and the batch is finished. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a way of getting repeatability and seeing, like, okay, yes, we were doing things correctly. Like this type of sake that we're trying to make looks the same every time, and it helps us along that path. Two other things I wanted to quickly show you is, so we do a style of putting a batch together called koboji kome. And in koboji kome, you put all the yeast in at the beginning. So we, for the most part, don't have a shubo. And a shubo is sort of a yeast starter. If you don't have very much yeast, you can sort of grow it up slowly. And so I'm transitioning now from koboji kome to something called koan toka, which is a type of shubo or yeast starter for a batch that I think will work well in the hot months of summer in New York. Mm-hmm. So because of the pandemic, we've had supply issues, and our our yeast supplier, the person who grows up large amounts of yeast for us, rightly shut down. And so I've like had to kind of accelerate our yeast program. So that's what a little bit what this is, but I just want to show you what sake yeast looks like on a petri dish.
Wow, that's
So
very
this is, yeah, so this is, you could make, so each one of those, when the dots go from very dark down to the individual dots, those are, when the plate was streaked, those are individual yeast cells that landed there, and then they started multiplying into a colony.
Wow.
So you could take one of those tiny dots and start growing it up and make a gigantic batch of sake from one of those tiny dots. And the type of yeast that it is will infer all sorts of its character to that sake.
That is very, very cool. You know, talking from a sake geek point of view, I totally dig that. I wanted to be able to have one of our attendees ask you a question. So I'm going to kind of put it out there for people to raise their hand, and we'll just kind of randomly pick somebody to ask you a question, if you don't mind, Brandon, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
So for those of you that have a question for Brandon, feel free to press the raise hand option, and we'll bring you on board with your camera. Hopefully, you know, you're decent enough to jump on board, and please ask Brandon a cool question about the brewery.
Okay, real quick, while those questions are coming up, I just wanted to show some books that are out there for people who either have a brewery, want to start a brewery, or are just interested in sake or koji making. So there's this book. I'm not going to try and pronounce the author's name, but he's a French guy that spent a lot of time in Japan. This is the best English translated book that I've come across. So I highly recommend Nihonshu. I think you can find it on Amazon. This is the standard book from the Brewing Society of Japan. And it's great. It's in Japanese, which I can't read, but I can put Google Translate over, which sometimes gives comical results. But this is a great book to have that you can get from Jozo online. You can ping one of us to find a link for that. This is the Brewing Society of Japan's sort of short translation of this book. And it's pretty interesting. The thing I've heard from Tojis in Japan about both of these books is this tends to be kind of the older style of brewing, and it isn't as relevant now, but they're both fantastic books to have. I think for the home brewer, this is something I got a long time ago. Let me see here. This is by William Ald, who I met in Portland. And this is a great for like a home brewer if somebody wants to like make a batch of sake at home. This is a good place to start. And then finally, a book I just got, if you're into koji, this is by Nakaji, and it's both in Japanese and English. And this is just a real straightforward making koji in your kitchen. It's good, I think, for home brewers, for people who want to make miso, for chefs. So this is a great new book. So with that, I think I'll walk out to Brian.
Great.
And maybe we can switch over to him and we can do questions out there.
Awesome. Yeah, we have a hand up from Justin over here. So I think what we'll do is we'll bring Justin on board as you're kind of getting situated for some questions and some talks to hear about you guys and how you got started. So I'm going to bring Justin on board. So Justin, let me see if it pulls you up. Yep, here you go. Hello, Justin. Oh, no. Oh, I think we lost Justin. Oh, there he is.
Are you here?
Yes. How are you
Hey
doing?
guys, I'm doing well. This is awesome. Appreciate you guys putting this on. Justin here, run a restaurant and bar karaoke place here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, Big Box Karaoke. We recently brought in the number 14 in Blue Door. It was well received from you guys, so great job. I think your sake is amazing. One of the questions that we've gotten from our customers is about nigoris. Obviously, they're really popular here in America, especially here to our clientele here in Arkansas. So just wanted to get your opinion on the nigoris and what you think of those, and if it's something that you guys have done and something you might look into in the future.
So it's definitely something so there are a bunch of things that we're working to make and that we're excited about. And we know how popular Nigori sake is in the US. And so it's something that we intend to make and really want to. We make a version of it, this freshly pressed stuff called shiboritate that we serve in our tap room, which is a light nigori. But it does require some changes in our process that we want to make sure that we have time and focus to kind of work through prior to releasing anything to the public. Essentially, everything that we send to you, we want to enjoy as much as we hope you'll enjoy. And so there's a long lead time before we actually kind of release something new to restaurants and retailers. Now that said, I mean, our first batches of sake were this nigori-like thing because our press wasn't working very well. It's called orazake, which is essentially the lees that settle at the end of pretty much the post-pressing at the end of the fermentation process. And so we know how much folks that came into our tap room enjoyed that, and we will release a nigori in time, but it just will take us time.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, guys.
Hey, thank you for your support. I'm so glad that your events went well, and it's nice to see you on video. So congratulations to you too. That's awesome.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, we'll be in touch soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Justin. All right. I think we have one more hand up. So I think we should just take one more question for you guys, and then we'll have you guys kind of go over your story. So Dominique has her hand up over here. We're going to get her back up, and hopefully we can get a question from her. Here we go. Looks like it's working. Yes, and we should do another kampai, by the way. For those of you that are missing out on the full experience of the kampais, we are doing a nijikai, which afterwards we're going to be getting together everyone on video so we can kind of hang out in a little bit more relaxed setting, all the videos going, all kampaiing, and getting loosened up. All right, so kampai. Oh, sorry. Here we go.
Bye.
Kampai.
Bye.
Kampai.
Dominic, sorry. I thought it was Dominic. My apologies about that. Dominic,
No worries, no worries.
you have a question for Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's not a question. Thank you for doing this. It's really cool to get a look inside your brewery. I actually had a question about the tanks. You mentioned that a lot of the equipment you guys are using was kind of improvised or manufactured locally. How about those tanks?
Yeah. So like I said, we're under construction. So a lot of our tanks are kind of moved out of that space right now. So you're not quite seeing all of them. But I'll say like a couple things about the tanks. We've sourced them from a variety of places from all over the world, from Italy to China to US. Yeah. But also, I suspect that our Moromi tanks are not this. Like, I know there's a ratio for tank size in Japan, and we're a little different for our main Moromi tanks, and that's because we're in Brooklyn, and we've got very tall ceilings and not a lot of square footage. So our tanks are pretty skinny and tall.
Right.
Which, if anybody has stirred a batch of Moromi, the day after Tome, sort of the day after you finally put a batch together, it really starts to get going strongly, and the rice comes up on this huge cap. So that is the most difficult stir day, is the second day after you've made a batch. And you'll go in and you'll try, it's like, I haven't made wine, but it's like punching a cap on wine, and you get down below that rice, and it's like a volcano of CO2. And splatter. So that's our tanks.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Stinky and exciting.
Yeah, they were.
Thanks, guys.
For the question. So we're about to get going with some questions to Brian and Brandon. But as we're doing that, we're going to simultaneously do a poll for some questions to feel you out for next week's discussions. So we'd love to kind of hear your take on things. We're going to have Mr. Sullivan put up that poll. Thank you so much. So feel free to fill that in while we hear from Brian and Brandon. So guys, tell us a little bit about you. You know, I mean, you know, Brooklyn Kura, you know, thank you so much for the tour, but we want to hear more about what you guys are all about, how you met, everything.
We've been lovers for many years.
Oh, jeez.
It's all right.
Sake after dark.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's been a pretty fortunate, 5 years? I mean, longer now, actually. It's been almost, we met in Japan at a mutual friend's wedding, and just had a blast touring from Tokyo to Takayama to Shirakawa-go, drinking sake from the source for the first time. And we both have our own individual stories about sake and sake experiences before that. But I mean, a friendship started, and this real interest in the way sake was produced started from that trip. And I mean, you fast forward years of like respective home brewing and talking about how sake is made and what the market in the US is, and whether or not there's a place for us to actually start manufacturing sake here. And it's the support and encouragement of people on this call, some of the first people in the industry that we met, like Chris Johnson, that kind of encouraged us to take the risk and start the brewery. I mean, sake is inextricably linked to Japanese culture and a history and a focus on quality that is really, really like intimidating to even think you're gonna kind of be a part of, let alone produce. And so, I mean, we both have been kind of romanced by this idea of the history and lineage, but also the unique and idiosyncratic things that we could do in the US trying to produce sake on our own.
Interesting. I love it. I love it. Before you get into a little bit more, I'd love for Jamie and Susan. Susan, why don't you, you know, there's lots of questions that are coming up.
Here's a question from John Puma. What's been the biggest challenge you've dealt with as Brooklyn Kura has grown?
Well, here, actually, I've got an answer for that. Have you ever shut down your retail and all your retail customers as a result of like a pandemic that was unanticipated? John, I know you were asking a like more thoughtful kind of historical question, but right now we have very little business, so it's just the good nature of the community and kind of a focus on what can be and what will be when people start coming back together that keeps us motivated. But this has been for everyone in all industries, but like for us also a very trying time where we've had to scale back production. We've had to see our customers and friends go out of business, and we've had to wonder like what the hell is going to happen with our company. So yes, beyond that, I mean, you work hard, you fight a little bit, you make things better, you make good decisions, you make bad decisions, but if your intent is to kind of do something that you're proud of, and you're lucky, it's been a decent outcome.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, from a production standpoint, kind of one of the saving graces on that stress is the saying that there's 10,000 ways to make sake. And I think that we met early on. We met some really generous people, some really generous tojis in Japan, who were very encouraging. It's stressful to like take something that's so steeped in another culture and try and bring it here and try and do it properly. That's very stressful. So the early encouragement that we had from a lot of tojis in Japan and a lot of the early advice, like I'm not maybe answering John's question, but like it helped us overcome that, like all those difficult things you might expect at the beginning.
You know, the only thing I'd add is I remember sitting in our first laboratory space in Bushwick, and having groups come visit us. Among them are like groups of like 10, 15 people, just essentially coming in here in our space, and with like low expectations of what we were trying to do, and like a strong connection with the history of what we were hoping to produce, and just winning them over with just a focus on quality, an open ear to kind of how they worked and what they did, in order to kind of better answer questions and also ultimately produce a better quality product.
Well, I was wondering how you were received in Japan when you reached out to ask questions. Like, to me, I feel like there's like a brotherhood of sake there, that possibly they're like, what are you guys trying to do?
Right. Yeah, it's been like, we say this a lot. It's been overwhelmingly positive. Like, you know, I think that people perceive us as being like very generally interested in like understanding the sake making process. So it's like just, also I think that, like, you know, sake to some degree is on the decline in Japan. And I think when producers in Japan see people outside of the country taking an interest in it, particularly when they're trying to like be very traditional about it, that they're very excited about that. I mean, that could lead to more sales and more exports. And just, and you're right, it's like, I think it really comes down to like just the bonding you get from making sake and being part of that culture.
You also show respect for not just the sake making process, but also you respect Japanese culture in general, and I think that shows. And you come off as very respectful.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it's like, you know, it's not a fine line, but we are like trying to take something from another culture and make it American. And that has, you know, nuance to it.
And risk.
Yeah. And so, you know, we've been very open about how we're doing it. We're not Japanese. We're not pretending to make like traditional Japanese sake.
Wait. I'm sorry. You guys are not Japanese. Sorry. Whoa. I'm sorry.
So,
yeah. So we're like, you know, we're interested in the drink itself.
Yeah.
You know, I think which transcends a lot of things.
So Aya Ota is asking, which product is the most popular of Brooklyn Kura?
So you know, it's interesting. I mean, we serve a bunch of things that we make in smaller batches for a more focused audience in our tap room, that we don't necessarily produce in larger scale for broader distribution. The sake that sells the most, and that people, I think, that it's a little more accessible, it's lighter, a little more aromatic, and it's a very focused Kinjo, is our number 14. And that's something that we find that when we present to someone and they smile and come back and say, I want to try more sake, I want to try more of your sake. But that said, I mean, we've released some things like the partnership we did with Nambu Bijin, this Brooklyn Bijin, which was this fantastic Chumai Daikinjo, like they exceeded all expectations, that like the few folks that were able to get cases and or bottles really celebrated. And we made much more traditional styles as well, as like a kimoto that we had available, and is like much more focused and has a lot of depth and complexity to it as it's aged over the course of a year and a half. And so, I mean, there aren't necessarily favorites. The commercially most popular is our number 14. Second to that is our Blue Door. And they're very different in the way that they present, but they both share this like kind of fruity, kind of rich quality that I think our sakes generally share. And so those are the two I would say.
Jamie, you want to ask the guys a couple of questions?
Sure. So yeah, what are some kind of projects and styles you guys are working on right now? You said you kind of have a long lead time for things.
Yeah. So the big graph and our construction have sort of like impacted our scheduling, but I have a bunch of ideas about things that I want to make every single like traditional style sake that there is, We do have a lot of demand for our ginjo and our junmai, and it's also important for us to like repeatedly make that and get it dialed in. That said, I'm looking forward to like having our full crew here brewing, having our new space to where we can have sort of the breathing room to work on some of those things. So I've got a couple weird things that we'll put into the tap room and see how that's received. But the big thing I'm looking forward to is just doing a traditional Yamahai. Like we've started off trying to do pretty clean sakes, like pretty light and clean, but I do want to make a big Yamahai. Is a thing I'm interested in next.
So
with only a couple minutes left, guys, I'd love to hear a little bit more of like how the customer base can really get your products. I know that things are a little bit slowed down at the moment, but do you know of access to your products and talk about the tasting room really quick?
So we've kind of been taking our time and being thoughtful about how to respond to this crisis, both as a company, as individuals. Fortunately, we just packaged and are about to label 2 new styles of sake. One new Junmai Daiginjo, you can kind of see the label right here, which we should release in the next few weeks. And then we're gonna repeat this beautiful sake that Brandon's made twice, a Junmai Ginjo, we call it Grand Prairie, made with all Yamada Nishiki. Those 2 things are not gonna be available at retailers. We're probably gonna do a direct consumer program for the 20 cases that we have for the 2 of them. That being said, I mean, a lot of our retailers are struggling to make it happen. So if you're interested in learning where to buy our sake, you can go onto our website and look at the wine shops and liquor stores around New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania that carry us. We're expecting in the end of May, after things have settled down a little bit, to think through a more direct-to-consumer strategy, which will allow us to make our number 14, our Blue Door, and all our special release sakes available to our customers, especially as the restaurant industry works to repair itself. But if you have any questions about our sake, how we produce it, where it's available, you can reach out to us anytime at info@brooklynkura.com, or Brandon or myself individually at brandon@brooklynkura.com or brian@brooklynkura.com.
We have the same last name.
Yes, we do. I married him, yeah.
This has been totally amazing, I have to say. I mean, we have a lot of attendees right here. We have a poll that we have the poll results that I just want to talk about really quick. And we also have the Nijikai, right? Our weekly event is from 8 to 9, but we'll also do the after party for those that want to join the after party at 9 o'clock. Tim is going to be posting there we go, the Nijikai Zoom info right there. So please, for those that want to still ask questions to Brian and Brandon, we'll be answering those questions there. And for right now, the poll results for what would you like to see in the future Sake Association meetings, the ASA meetings. The winner right here is actually interviewing with Japanese brewers. And we would love to be able to connect that. We'll definitely be reaching out to more Japanese brewers. And in second place at actually 50% of the results was interviews with US sake industry people, such as Brian and Brandon. So we thank you so much for helping us host tonight's event. And I think a good way to end today is to just ask you what you are drinking right now. And we should end with a beautiful kanpai and move on to our Nijikai, which in Japan is the usual thing. You kind of like do a kanpai and then you go right next door to the Nijikai or the Sanjikai or the Yojikai or the second or third or fourth after party, we can say. So gentlemen, first of all, what are you drinking there?
It's like a first date again. We are drinking our Junmai Daiginjo. This is it's called Catskills. It's going to be released in the next 2 weeks. Something we're incredibly proud of. Our first experience with the Daiginjo was in collaboration with Nambu Bijin, and I mean, It's light, aromatic, focused, fantastic sake. Single pasteurized in bottle, and we're excited to share with everyone.
Oh, guys, thank you so much. Jamie, Susan, thank you. Everyone, Tim, thank you from behind the scenes. Kampai, and we'll see you on the other side at Nijikai. Okay.
Bye.
Kampai. Kampai.
Bye.
Mm.